My name is Rachel Carter, and for most of my life I've been known as the black sheep of one of Washington, D.C.'s most respected political families. While my older brother William climbed the ladder of legacy Harvard Law White House internships in a spot at our father's prestigious law firm, and my younger sister Claire dazzled the D.C. social circuit with her beauty charm and upcoming wedding to a millionaire's son, I was quietly building something that no one in my family cared to ask about. I didn't go to Yale. I didn't intern on Capitol Hill. I didn't date a senator's son. Instead, I coded in my apartment in Silver Spring, Maryland, alone, unseen, and for years underestimated. Tonight was my father's 70th birthday. A black tie affair at the Carter family estate, a stone mansion that had appeared in Architectural Digest and once hosted a sitting president. Everyone who was anyone in Washington's elite would be there: judges, donors, lobbyists, retired senators, and of course the extended Carter clan. I had almost RSVP'd no. For years, I had stopped attending family events, tired of the patronizing smiles, the condescending questions, the constant reminder that I didn't fit. But something about this evening felt necessary, final, even. And so I went. I wore a simple black dress, tailored but modest Banana Republic, not Chanel. My Tesla stayed parked in the underground garage of my Georgetown condo. I arrived in a rented Ford Fusion. I didn't come to impress anyone. I came to listen. I walked through the arched double doors into a sea of pearls, scotch, and self-congratulation. Classical music played softly beneath the hum of conversations about fundraisers, real estate, and private school admissions. Crystal glasses clinked. Waiters in white jackets floated by with trays of champagne and duck canapes. Claire spotted me first. Her perfectly symmetrical face froze for half a second before morphing into a rehearsed smile. "Rachel," she sang, air-kissing both cheeks like a woman who had studied abroad in Paris, though she never had. "You came, everyone will be so surprised," I bet I said, with a soft smile ignoring the subtle glance she gave my dress. Then came William, my father's clone, in a custom navy suit, polished shoes, and a handshake that bordered on aggressive. He gave me a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Still doing that tech thing he asked. "You know, Claire said you moved out of Silver Spring." "That true, I'm in Georgetown now," I replied calmly. "Closer to downtown." "Nice," he said, as if the idea mildly impressed him. "Maybe you'll finally join the real world." I didn't bother replying. Then across the room, I saw my mother. Elizabeth Carter had been a debutante at 19, a senator's wife at 25, and an event chairwoman for every major charity in the city by 40. Tonight, she looked like perfection in a navy blue gown, diamonds at her ears, and not a single strand of her silver-streaked blonde hair out of place. She approached me with the grace of a woman who had practiced elegance as a religion. "Darling," she said with a practiced kiss to the cheek we weren't sure you'd come. I simply smiled. "Happy birthday to Dad." She nodded already, turning to adjust a floral arrangement on a nearby table. "Do try to mingle, won't you?" "Of course." I found a glass of champagne and drifted toward the edge of the room, scanning for the only person I truly wanted to see: Aunt Margaret, my father's older sister, the family anomaly, a journalist, twice divorced, no children. She wore purple velvet and a crooked pin that read, "Resist." And unlike the others, her smile when she saw me was real. "Rachel," she exclaimed, pulling me into a warm hug. "You look steady." "I feel steady," I replied. "Good, because tonight's going to test that." Before I could ask what she meant, a staff member clinked a fork against a crystal glass. The room quieted instantly. My father, Senator Charles Carter Rhett, stood beneath the grand chandelier flanked by William and Claire. His voice still commanded attention even years after his last speech on the Senate floor. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began. 70 years. What a ride it's been. A round of polite laughter. He continued reflecting on public service, the importance of family legacy. And then, inevitably, he transitioned into what he called the next generation. "William has accepted a new partnership at the firm," he said proudly. Claire and her fiancé, Daniel, have been featured in the Washingtonian's Young Power Couples issue. The future is bright for the Carter name. He paused. And as we look toward the future, Elizabeth and I have made some estate planning decisions, with legacy in mind. I felt the shift in the room. My mother stepped forward holding a glass of champagne. "We've updated our will," she said lightly like she was announcing the menu. "William and Claire will take over the properties and charitable foundations." Another pause. "And Rachel," she smiled faintly, "we wish you the best in your endeavors. But effective immediately, your name will be removed from all trust disbursements and property allocations." I stood there frozen. For a moment, it felt like the air was being sucked out of the room. Then the polite murmurs returned. Some eyes flicked toward me. Most didn't. And that's when my phone rang. Not buzzed rang. I saw the name Jessica Rothschild, Berlin Fund. I glanced up at the room, then pressed accept. "Jessica Rachel," came the voice, calm and precise. "It's done. We're in. $60 million signed. You've got it. Valuation is now at $120 million, and I've already spoken to TechCrunch." I smiled. Slowly. "Thank you, Jessica," I said loud enough for the nearest guests to hear. "Please send the final docs to my legal team and have PR prepare the release. We go public next quarter." I ended the call and raised my glass. "To family," I said quietly. No one toasted back, but the look on my father's face, it was the moment I'd waited a lifetime for. I wasn't always the black sheep. There was a time fleeting and long past when I believed I could belong in the Carter family, when I thought merit might matter more than image, when I still sought approval from people who never truly saw me. I grew up in the heart of Georgetown in a federal-style brownstone that had been in the Carter family for 3 generations. The walls were lined with framed photos of presidents shaking hands with my grandfather, oil paintings of distant ancestors in powdered wigs, and plaques from Harvard, Yale, and the Naval Academy. Expectations weren't just spoken, they were etched into the architecture. My father, Charles Carter, was the kind of man who measured success in political capital and legacy. To him, parenting was delegation. He outsourced warmth to my mother and discipline to nannies while he crafted speeches and shook hands at fundraisers. My mother, Elizabeth, was as much a symbol as she was a person. A former Miss Virginia turned D.C. society queen. Her calendar revolved around luncheons, galas, and silent auctions. She didn't raise children, she curated them, and my siblings. They were born ready for the spotlight. William, 4 years older, was the golden heir. He had my father's square jaw, his debating skills, and his unflinching belief that he was destined for greatness. Even in grade school, he talked like a politician. When we were 8 and 12, he gave a speech at Thanksgiving dinner about American exceptionalism. My parents cried. Then came Claire, 2 years younger than me. Claire sparkled. She had my mother's smile, her effortless charm, and her uncanny ability to be exactly what people wanted her to be. At 14, she was co-chair of a teen fundraising committee. At 18, she made her debut at the National Cotillion. At 21, she was dating a congressman's son and planning a future that looked like a Vogue editorial. And me, I liked to take things apart. Old radios, computers, toasters, I wanted to understand how they worked, why they failed. I coded my first program at 11 using a second-hand laptop and free online tutorials. It was a simple calculator app, but I remember the thrill of making something out of nothing. It was my own kind of power. When I showed my father, he gave me a distracted nod. "That's nice, but don't stay up late with that thing. You'll ruin your eyes." My mother's only comment. "Maybe you'll grow out of this phase. It's not very ladylike." By high school, I had taught myself Python and JavaScript. I started an after-school coding club. We built a website for the school newspaper and created a student poll app that accidentally crashed the server on voting day. I was called to the principal's office not for punishment, but for praise. Still, no one from my family showed up to the award ceremony. William was giving a speech at his Model UN conference. Claire had a photo shoot for the Teen Philanthropist of the Year spread. At home over roast chicken in Bordeaux, I told them we won the regional coding competition. My mother looked up briefly. "Darling, you really must sit up straighter when you talk." When college applications came around, my parents assumed I'd follow the Carter tradition, Yale, then law school. Maybe marry someone from the Kennedy or Bush family line. I had other plans. I applied to Stanford secretly with a killer essay about data ethics and healthcare disparity. I got in. When I told them, the silence at the dinner table stretched for 30 full seconds. "California," my mother finally said, as if I'd announced I was joining a circus. "You don't even surf." My father folded his napkin with military precision. "That's a tech school," he said with quiet disdain. "Not a Carter path. I got a merit scholarship I offered, hoping that would matter." "It's not about money, Rachel," my mother said, exasperated. "It's about trajectory." They eventually agreed to support my decision, which meant they paid tuition, but only for the first year. After that, they said I needed to learn responsibility. William's full Harvard tuition covered. Claire's summer abroad programs. No question, but I was on my own, so I worked. Barista shifts at a local cafe. Freelance app development gigs. Late-night rideshare driving on weekends. During the day, I buried myself in machine learning classes and health tech case studies. I was exhausted, but for the first time, I felt free. Free from expectation, free from performance, free to fail and learn from it. My professors noticed. I earned a spot in a graduate-level research lab. I co-authored a paper on predictive analytics for post-surgical complications. I interned at a tiny healthcare startup and ended up leading their API security design. Meanwhile, my family still thought I was finding myself. At Thanksgiving, William gave a toast about building a legacy. Claire passed around glossy wedding invites. When they asked about me, I mentioned I'd been working on a patient data encryption project. "That sounds useful." My mother said the same way someone might describe a can opener. At some point, I stopped trying, stopped updating them, stopped inviting them to demos, pitch events, publication launches. It hurt at first. Then it became survival. But I didn't give up on building. I moved back to DC after graduation, mostly for opportunity, but partly, I admit, out of habit. I took a job at a mid-sized medical tech firm, decent pay, better experience. I observed, learned, listened. And then in 2019, during a conference on HIPAA compliance, I had a conversation that changed everything. A hospital administrator from Baltimore told me, "You know, our systems are 20 years outdated. We're basically guarding million-dollar data with a padlock from CVS." That night, I started scribbling notes. What if you could actually protect patient data using adaptive encryption? What if you could predict breaches before they happened? What if the very infrastructure of patient care could be reimagined, not just digitized? That was the seed of what would become MediSafe Vault. I didn't tell my parents or my siblings or anyone in the family. Instead, I told Alicia, a former nurse turned operations manager I met through a mutual friend. She became my co-founder, fierce-focused and just as obsessed with solving the broken healthcare data system as I was. We bootstrapped. We coded at night. I cashed out my 401k, maxed a credit card borrowed from no one. When we got our first paying hospital client 6 months later, I cried in a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot. Not because of the money, but because someone believed in what we were building. Not my father, not my mother, not my Ivy League siblings, but a hospital IT director named Michael who saw our demo and said, "This could save lives." That was all the approval I ever really needed. Still, some part of me deep down hoped that one day my family would ask. Ask what I was doing, why I worked so late, what kept me up at night, what I cared about. They never did, until tonight. And only because now, I was worth something. The clinking of silverware quieted as the servers brought out the main course, roasted duck with sweet potato puree and balsamic glazed carrots. My mother raised her glass again. "To family," she said with her usual poise. "To William's promotion, to Claire's engagement, and to the future of the Carter legacy." Glasses lifted around the table. Then she turned to me, offering the kind of tight smile she reserved for uncomfortable charity events. And to Rachel, she added, for continuing to find her path. The pause before "find her path" was brief but loud. I swallowed hard and smiled politely. Thank you. That was my cue. Every year at these family events, we were expected to share updates. A Carter tradition. A ritualistic airing of achievements. William spoke first about his firm, the new team under his management, and some high-profile cases that were confidential but very exciting. My father beamed, asking about specific judges' rulings and fund connections. Claire followed, gushing about wedding preparations, her fiancé's growing influence in city council circles, and how they were seriously considering buying a historic estate in Virginia. My mother looked like she was watching royalty at a coronation, and then all eyes turned to me. "So, Rachel," my father said, swirling the wine in his glass, "how's that little data project of yours going?" The room fell quiet. I took a sip of water. "It's going well," I said evenly. "We've expanded into several hospital systems and recently closed our Series A." My mother blinked, clearly unsure what that meant. "Series A funding," I clarified. "It allows us to grow. We've got 18 employees now." William chuckled softly. "Still small, huh?" Claire chimed in. "It's kind of cool that you're doing something you enjoy, even if it's not super prestigious." I bit my tongue. Before I could say more, my father cleared his throat. "Actually," he began, "this brings us to something your mother and I have been discussing." Uh-oh. He leaned forward slightly, fingers steepled like he was about to deliver a Supreme Court ruling. "We've been reviewing our estate structure," he said, "and how best to support the branches of the family that are actively contributing to its legacy." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He continued as if he hadn't heard me. "William will take over the Family Foundation's financial oversight starting next quarter. Claire and her fiancé will be moving into the Alexandria property. We're gifting it to them as a wedding present." I sat straighter, and my mother dabbed the corners of her mouth with a linen napkin. "And we've decided it's time to redirect resources toward the parts of the family that align with our values. That means you'll no longer be part of the Carter Family Trust." There it was. Cold, clinical, public, like a line item in a budget. I felt something twist in my chest, but I refused to let it show. "You're cutting me off," I said flatly. My father nodded. "Effective immediately." Claire gave me a sympathetic look that didn't reach her eyes. "It's really just to motivate you, Rachel. We want you to make better choices." William added, "This tech phase you're in, it's fine for now, but eventually you'll want something real, stable, meaningful." I stared at them. All of them. "You've never once asked what I actually do," I said, my voice quieter now. "You've never asked who we help, what problem we solve." My mother sighed. "It's not personal, darling. We just have to think of the bigger picture." And that's when my phone began to vibrate. Once, twice, 3 times. It was Alicia. I glanced down. 5 calls in a row. Something urgent. I stood up. "Excuse me. I need to take this." My father raised an eyebrow. "Surely it can wait until dessert." "No," I said simply. "It can't." I stepped away from the table but stayed within earshot, phone pressed to my ear. "Alicia." Her voice was breathless, excited. "Rachel, we got it. Jessica just confirmed Berlin Fund is in, 60 million, pre-IPO valuation is now at 120 million. I exhaled slowly. "They want exclusivity on the media announcement. TechCrunch is standing by. Oh, and Forbes wants to include you in their Founders to Watch feature next week. Send the docs to legal," I said, loud enough for the room to hear. "We move forward tonight." I ended the call. Silence at the table. My father's fork hovered mid-air. My mother's hand trembled slightly on her wine glass. Claire's expression was frozen like a malfunctioning pageant queen. I returned to my seat, picked up my napkin, and smiled. "Sorry about that," I said casually. "Just a little update from my hobby." The silence that followed my return to the table wasn't awkward, it was seismic. It was the kind of silence that only falls when long-held assumptions collapse under the weight of undeniable truth. My mother was the first to speak. "Rachel, darling," she began, voice dripping with new warmth. "Why didn't you say anything about this sooner?" I tilted my head slightly. "You never asked." My father, who moments earlier had been talking about reallocating family resources, now looked like he'd bitten into a lemon. $120 million valuation, he said almost to himself. "And you're the founder?" I nodded. "Co-founder and CEO. I own 54%. William looked like he'd just missed out on a hot investment tip. "Is this the same company you've been working on all this time?" I gave a small smile. The very same. Claire jumped in voice, falsely cheerful. Well, that's just amazing, Rachel. We're so proud of you. I mean, this really changes things. I sipped my wine. Does it? I asked calmly. The room went still again. My father leaned forward. Look, let's not dwell on earlier misunderstandings. What's important now is how we can support you moving forward. I almost laughed. Support me? Yes, he continued, his voice shifting into strategy mode. The Carter family name carries weight. We can help position your company politically, open doors in Washington, maybe even connect you with regulatory allies. We could create synergy, Claire added, eyes gleaming. Brian's campaign is looking for tech innovation to champion. This could be perfect. And the family foundation, my mother said quickly, has been looking to modernize its grant-making. Perhaps a healthcare initiative with your platform? I looked around the table. It was like watching a boardroom full of investors pivoting their pitch when the market moved. They hadn't changed, they had simply recalculated. Their interest wasn't in me, it was in what I could offer them now. And I was done playing that game. I appreciate the sudden enthusiasm, I said slowly. But MediSafe Vault isn't seeking political backing, and we're fully funded. My father frowned. Don't be rash, Rachel. A pre-IPO partnership with the family trust could be mutually beneficial. We could structure a board seat, William offered. It would add credibility. I set my fork down. We already have a board, one made up of people who believed in us when we were pitching from a closet with no AC. Surely there's room for family, my mother said, her voice tightening. There was, I said. You just walked out of it before dessert. Claire scoffed. Come on, we were trying to motivate you. You can't hold that against us now. I met her gaze steady. It's not about holding a grudge. It's about setting boundaries. My father's jaw clenched. So what exactly are you saying? I'm saying I said clearly that MediSafe Vault is not up for family investment. Not now. Not ever. And my success doesn't rewrite the past. It just clarifies it. Aunt Margaret let out a soft, delighted laugh. God, I love watching you in action. My mother's smile faltered. Rachel, be reasonable. I've been nothing but reasonable for 34 years, I replied. I've attended these dinners, listened to the backhanded compliments, and sat silently while you praised everyone but me. I played nice. I didn't make a scene. I just went out and built something. And the second it became valuable, suddenly I matter. My voice wasn't angry. It was even, calm. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, just never imagined it would feel this quietly victorious. William reached for his phone. We should talk strategy. I've got some people you should meet. I shook my head. I already have a strategy. I already have people. What I don't have is the patience to explain myself anymore. Claire looked genuinely confused. But we're family. That should count for something. It does, I said. It counts as history, not leverage. My father stood trying to reclaim authority. This conversation isn't over. For me, it is. I pushed back my chair and stood. I have a meeting in the morning, a real one, with people who don't need to be convinced of my value. My mother stood to panic flickering in her eyes. We should plan a celebration. A gala, perhaps let everyone know what you've achieved. I smiled sadly. You didn't care when I was building it. You don't get to take credit now that it's done. Claire made one last attempt. So, are you cutting us off? I considered the question. No, I said. I'm not cutting anyone off, but I am protecting what I've built. And myself. From here on out, my time, my energy, and my company are mine to choose, not yours to claim. Aunt Margaret rose beside me, linking her arm through mine. Well, she said with a grin, I think this black sheep is officially out of the pen. We walked out together, past the antique portraits, the $30,000 chandelier, and the people who had spent decades looking through me. This time, they saw me, but I no longer needed them to. The next morning, I arrived at our DuPont Circle office to a sea of congratulatory emails, Slack pings, and a box of pastries someone had left on my desk with a sticky note. You did it, boss. But even amid the glow of success, I felt something deeper, something settled. The call from Berlin Fund had changed our trajectory. The IPO was now imminent, media attention was surging. But what anchored me most wasn't the money or the press, it was the clarity. The night before had been the final proof that I didn't need anyone's legacy, because I was building my own. Later that afternoon, Alicia knocked gently and entered my office. She had a folder in one hand and a smirk on her face. "You ready for this?" I nodded. "Let's do it." Inside the folder was the founding paperwork for the Carter Equity Initiative, a $20 million philanthropic fund I would personally endow from my Series B stock conversion. Its mission was simple: empower young women, especially women of color and low-income backgrounds, to enter the tech and healthcare fields. Coding Camp's startup grants mentorship programs and scholarships, not charity investment in potential, the kind that no one ever offered me. The name Carter was deliberate. I wasn't erasing my family. I was redefining what that name meant. A week later, TechCrunch ran a feature, Meet the Founder Who Built a $120 million healthcare startup, then gave $20 million away to level the playing field. 2 days after that, Forbes called. They wanted me on the cover of their next Billionaire Builders issue. I agreed on one condition: the article would focus on the work, not the family. No tales of drama, no from neglected daughter to tech queen angle. Just the impact. They respected that. But the public read between the lines. The messages poured in. From young women in Ohio, nurses in Nevada, immigrant moms in Queens. Emails with subject lines like, "You gave me hope, and they said I couldn't either." One girl, age 14, wrote, "My dad says computers are for boys, but I saw your photo and showed him. Now he says maybe I'm the exception." That one stayed with me. So did the invitation to speak at a DC charter school near Anacostia. I walked into the auditorium to find 300 girls in plastic chairs, their eyes bright and uncertain. I told them the truth. That I had been underestimated, overlooked, laughed at, that I had been cut off from a family that never truly saw me, and that I had built anyway, not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. Afterward, a girl with braids and braces asked me, "How do you know when your dream is real?" I smiled. When it keeps you up at night, and when it still calls to you even when no one else believes. Back at the office, things were moving at light speed. We had expanded into 63 hospitals were testing in Canada and negotiating early access in the UK. Our CTO had been approached by Microsoft. Our head of compliance was invited to testify before Congress, but my phone, it hadn't stopped buzzing. Messages from my family trickled in like slow drips from a leaky faucet. "William, we were out of line. Can we grab coffee sometime? Claire Bryan would love to get your take on digital health policy. We're hosting a fundraiser. Maybe you could attend." My father, "Your success is impressive. I'd like to talk about how the Carter Foundation can support the initiative." My mother, "Darling, the Symphony Gala is next month. Would be so lovely to see you there." I didn't respond, not right away. Instead, I visited the Children's Hospital of DC, one of the first organizations the initiative would support. They were building a telemedicine wing for rural pediatric care. The administrator showed me a hand-drawn thank you card from a child in West Virginia. It had glitter glue and crooked letters. "Thank you for making it easier to see my doctor. Love, Haley." That night, I sent the Carter family a single group message: "Thank you for reaching out. I'm focusing on the work right now. The initiative is fully funded. MediSafe Vault is fully staffed. I have everything I need. I'll be in touch when it makes sense." I left it at that, until one evening Aunt Margaret came to visit. She wore a purple shawl, boots with scuffed heels, and carried a tote bag full of hardcovers. As always, she toured our office like it was the Louvre. "This," she said, staring at a wall of metrics showing reduced breach risks, "is what a real legacy looks like." I took her to lunch at a quiet cafe. Over avocado toast, she finally asked, "What now, Rachel?" I took a deep breath. I think it's time to create my own family, my own circle, not just the company. People who value contribution, not connection. She nodded. "You already have." And she was right. There in that office were people who stayed late, not because I asked, but because they believed, who celebrated small wins, protected each other, and knew why this work mattered. They were my chosen family. 3 months later, MediSafe Vault's IPO launched on the NASDAQ. first day valuation $245 million. My net worth on paper $130 million. My parents sent flowers. I had them delivered to the children's wing at the hospital. 2 weeks after that, I hosted a dinner party not at the Carter estate, but at my new townhouse in Logan Circle. The guests, Alicia, Jessica, Aunt Margaret, my team, some of the girls from the charter school, even Michael, the IT director from our very first hospital client. There were no canapes, no valet parking, no string quartet, just laughter, good food, and stories of actual impact. Near the end of the night, I raised a glass. To everyone here, I said, for believing before it was easy, for choosing substance over surface, and for helping me turn something painful into something powerful. The room toasted, and for the first time in my life, I felt whole. A month after the IPO, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text. A real handwritten letter on monogrammed stationery, the kind only Elizabeth Carter would still use. My mother's penmanship was flawless as always. Rachel, I saw your speech at the Girls in Tech Summit. It was shared on Facebook by one of my charity board members. I don't pretend to understand the technology, but I saw the room's reaction. And, more importantly, I saw you. You were powerful, poised, clear. You have your grandfather's presence, and perhaps more of your father's fire than I ever admitted. I know I didn't always show it, but I was proud of you even when I didn't understand you. I hope it's not too late to say that. Love, Mother. I read it twice. It wasn't an apology. Not exactly, but it was something. Acknowledgement, recognition not of the company or the valuation, but of me. And though I didn't reply right away, I kept the letter in a drawer in my office, not as proof that I'd won, but as a reminder that people change, slowly and often imperfectly. A week later, my father requested a tour of the office. I agreed on my terms. He arrived wearing a navy suit, the same one he wore to press events during his Senate years. He greeted the staff politely, stiffly, like a politician shaking hands at a town hall. But as I walked him through our open plan space, showed him the real-time analytics dashboards, the call center for data breach alerts, the engineer huddle spaces named after pioneering women in STEM, he started to soften. In our glass conference room surrounded by whiteboards and post-it notes, he finally said, "You've built something impressive." Not what I expected, but substantial. Coming from him, it was a full-blown confession. "You were wrong," I said, not harshly, just plainly. He nodded once. "Yes, I was." Then, after a pause, "You've proven yourself." I met his eyes. I never needed to. That landed harder than I thought it would. He looked away, then back. "I hope we can find a way forward." Maybe I said honestly, but not the old way. "I won't be another Carter nameplate on a boardroom wall." He gave a slight smile. Fair enough. It wasn't resolution, but it was real. In the months that followed, I traveled more than ever. We expanded to the UK and signed pilot programs in New Zealand. I spoke at global summits on digital health ethics. I visited girls' schools in Chicago, Atlanta, and the Bronx, each one reminding me why I'd started all this in the first place. Still, the media kept calling. CNBC wanted a special. The Wall Street Journal requested an op-ed. Even Vogue reached out for a Women of Impact spread. I said yes to some, no to most, because by then I understood something vital. Success is loud, but meaning is quiet. It's in the late-night code push that stops a breach, the first paycheck sent to a single mom on our QA team, the handwritten card from a 12-year-old in Montana thanking us for helping her see her specialist faster. None of that ever made the headlines. But it made me. At our first Carter Equity Initiative board retreat, I brought Aunt Margaret as our new chair. She wore her signature purple scarf and carried a binder full of notes scribbled in the margins of Virginia Woolf essays. During her welcome speech, she said something that stayed with me. The best revenge isn't success. It's not needing revenge at all. That night, I thought about forgiveness. Not the Instagram kind, tidy-filtered, hashtagged, but the slow, messy-earned kind. I wasn't ready to forget the years of being sidelined, dismissed, ignored. But I was ready to choose what came next. I decided to attend the Carter family Thanksgiving just for a few hours. I brought a pie. Alicia came with me as a guest. And Buffer. The house looked the same. White columns, polished floors, the same damn ancestral portraits watching silently. But something in me had shifted. William didn't brag. Claire actually listened. My father offered me a glass of wine, not a lecture. My mother sat next to me at dinner, and when someone asked me what I did, she didn't interrupt. She let me speak. Later, as I was leaving, she walked me to the door. "Will you come to Christmas?" she asked. I paused. "Maybe." "No promises." She smiled. "Understood." 6 months after the IPO MediSafe vault was in 210 hospitals, our platform was protecting over 75,000 patients daily. We had won a National Innovation Award, and the foundation had funded its first 60 scholarships. But my favorite day was the day I got a letter from a girl named Imani, age 16, from Baltimore. My school doesn't have computers, but I go to the library to watch videos about coding. I saw yours. And now I believe I can do this too. Thank you for showing me what's possible. P.S. I'm going to build something even bigger than you one day. I framed that letter, because that's the legacy I want. Not buildings with my name, not magazine covers, but a chain reaction of girls who see themselves in this space and step into it. Girls who aren't waiting for approval. Girls who define their own worth. On the 1-year anniversary of that fateful family dinner, I hosted a celebration at my townhouse. There was no press, just people who mattered, the original team, the girls we sponsored, Aunt Margaret, even my mother who offered to help serve food, not host. We toasted with sparkling cider and shared stories. At one point, someone asked me, "What's next?" I thought about it. Then I said, more. More systems fixed, more doors opened. More girls who don't have to be the black sheep because now they have blueprints. And in that moment, I felt something deeper than pride. Not because I'd proven anyone wrong, but because I'd finally stopped needing to. I looked around the room at people who knew the full story, who loved the unfiltered version of me, not the one edited for respectability, and I raised my glass again. To legacy, I said. Not the kind we inherit, the kind we build. Have you ever been underestimated by the very people who were supposed to believe in you? Have you ever had to build your worth in silence only to be seen when success spoke for you? If so, you're not alone. But know this, you don't need permission to start. You don't need applause to keep going. And you don't need a family name to create a legacy. You just need one thing: belief in yourself. And in the future you're willing to fight for.